He's so busy, he'll make your head spin. It's Brian Kilmeade.
Welcome back. Senator Tom Cotton joins us now. Senator Armed Services Committee, Judiciary Committee, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Criminal Justice and Counterterrorism and in the Senate. Senator Tom Cotton, welcome.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me on again. I appreciate you.
No problem. So we barely got a mention of Russia being the enemy that they are and being the bloodthirsty, aggressive nation that they are displaying themselves to be. And just he's going to continue to fund the Iraq-Ukraine war. But in a way, he's prolonging the agony. And you write about that in today's column in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, Brian, it was a very curious speech. You know, I was watching the clock. I think it was an hour before Joe Biden mentioned any threat to America, to include the gravest threat to our way of life we've ever faced, the Chinese communists. It's almost as if they, finished up the speech Sunday afternoon at Camp David and celebrated over some ice cream, and someone realized, oh, we haven't said anything about the world or foreign policy. He spent more time on baggage fees than he did on the war in Ukraine or the Chinese Communist Party floating a balloon all across middle America. I think these are just examples of Biden projecting weakness and timidity. And as I write in the Wall Street Journal today, it's had a real cost for us and for our interest around the world. The president and Democrats, like to pat themselves on the back for helping arm Ukraine. But first, Joe Biden tempted Vladimir Putin in his first year in office to do what Putin has always wanted to do, which is reassemble the Russian Empire by conquering Ukraine. Whether it was allowing Russia to continue construction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline or giving them a no-strings-attached extension of the New START treaty, our only arms control treaty with Russia, which even the Biden State Department admits Russia is violating, to looking the other way on the Colonial Pipeline hack, to stopping arms shipments early in his administration to Ukraine. Time after time after time, Joe Biden projected weakness to Putin. And then, of course, the debacle in Afghanistan telegraphed that Joe Biden didn't have what it took to defend our interests. It's not a coincidence that Putin began to marshal his invasion force on the border of Ukraine just weeks after the collapse of Kabul. And even since the war has begun, Brian, Joe Biden's tendency, his instinct has always been half measures. You can have ammunition but not artillery. You can have artillery but not long-range artillery. Okay, you can have long-range artillery but not armor. Well, we'll give you infantry fighting vehicles but not tanks. Okay, we'll give you tanks but not F-16s or long-range missiles. So I think it's just a matter of time until those other weapons ultimately get to Ukraine. All these weapons have gotten there too slowly, though, and they force Ukraine to fight to take back territory as opposed to defending their territory from the very beginning.
Right. The Russians have lost hundreds of thousands, maybe close to 200,000 people. It's stunning. But you write this. This is the most telling line. The alternative to funding the Ukraine is not peace. It's not war or peace. What it is they absorb Ukraine. They continue to fight. And then we're going to say they're going to be fortified, they're going to be stronger, they're going to learn from it, and sooner or later we're going to be directly involved with this. He has to explain that to the American people. You should not have to.
Yeah. Brian, I wish it were the case that we could end the war today and Ukraine could reclaim all of its territory and Russia would be chastened. That's simply not the case. What we would have is what's sometimes known as a frozen conflict. That's typically the case under Vladimir Putin, twice in Chechnya, now twice in Ukraine, twice in Georgia, in Moldova, interventions in Syria, between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Putin has never once, resolved one of these military conflicts with a negotiated compromise and a peace agreement. It always just basically is Putin calling a halt, holding on to what he seized, and then rebuilding power for more action later. That's what happened in Ukraine in 2014 to 2022. And if we withdrew our support from Ukraine, again, we wouldn't have peace. We would have a Russian victory, with Russia holding militarily strategic terrain in Ukraine, holding much of Ukraine's industry and agriculture, being able to rebuild its strength, and at a time and opportunity of its choosing, restarting that war, perhaps taking all of Ukraine. Moldova could be the next on the chopping block. That's the side of one of those frozen conflicts, and that brings Russia deep into the heart of Europe on the border of multiple NATO countries. I understand and I agree with those who say that China is the greatest threat we face, But if we allow this war to come to an unsatisfactory conclusion in Ukraine, we can't focus our resources on China. We'll have to put those resources in Europe for a longer time and face constant risk of two fronts of conflict. Much better to have Ukraine win, to have a stable and durable peace in Europe so we can focus more of our efforts on China and the Western Pacific.
There's no doubt about it. He did barely brought up China and says we want a competition, not conflict. But China has a different message. They did not return our call yesterday after spying on us with this balloon. Final thought on China's the next step there?
Well, when someone comes up to you and punches you right in the mouth, Brian, you can say that you don't want conflict, but conflict has already begun. So the choice is only whether to win or lose. And China has been punching America metaphorically in the mouth for decades in multiple ways. So I'm mystified by the president's consistent rhetorical trick of saying we don't seek a Cold War. The Cold War is already here with us. The only choice is whether we win or we lose. What started out as a spy balloon last week quickly became a trial balloon, a test of Joe Biden's resolve and strength. And I think it's clear that he failed that test. I can tell your listeners, we easily could have shot down that balloon over the Aleutians. It was not much more complicated than giving the order to fire to our great pilots who were up there. But there was a conscious decision at the highest reaches of this administration not to shoot it down. And I got to say that I think the leaders in Beijing were kind of laughing in astonishment at Joe Biden all last week when he allowed it to float on its merry way all across America. I mean, it was like a Babylon Bee headline that President Biden says he'll shoot down the spy balloon when it's finished its spy mission. That actually became his policy.
Chinese company got rejected in North Dakota. They were going to buy a corn mill project right by a military base. 5-0 unanimous vote Monday from the Grand Forks City Council to not sell it to the Chinese company. That shows at least the American business community is starting to wake up. Final thought?
Yeah, I'm pleased with that. I've worked with Senators Kramer and Hoeven from North Dakota on that for over a year. We don't need to have Chinese companies owning land and building tall superstructures right next to militarily sensitive bases. I wish the Department of Defense had gotten it a little bit earlier and said, no way, no how can we allow this to happen, had overruled some of the China doves in places like the Treasury Department. I'm glad they finally went on the record and that the good people of Grand Forks and their elected representatives decided to stop it.
Senator Tom Cotton, thanks so much. Appreciate it.